as the slide says, I'm Kathryn Holton. I'm the website coordinator for Pendle. I'm going to talk today about how we're working with Liberator and Jadu to deliver our own transformation digital agenda. Obligatory demographic slide. Pendle, where's that? We don't have a name. We don't have a town called Pendle. So a bit of explanation there. We're a small, I don't know why I've written district there because we are actually a borough council. Smallish population. We've got lots of beautiful countryside. We've got deprived areas, 3 main towns, large ethnic minority. We have a world famous rhythm and blues festival, and we invented the Jelly Baby, if that's of interest to anybody. The most important fact on that slide, I think, is the bottom one, our digital exclusion indicator. Does anybody know what that means? Do you know what your exclusion indicators are, generally? Obviously, it's a really important indicator. For us, 5 means we're sort of medium on the scale of inability to access basic online products and services. So I think it's really, really important that you bear that in mind when you're on any digital journey. It's all well and good developing the online services and processes. You've got to give your customers the skills to use those services. That was me in 2004. We just implemented our first Jadu website back in 2004, so we were one of the first councils to sign up with Jadu. We were looking for a content management system because we've been using Dreamweaver up to that point to build our websites. All the content management system providers around at that time were providing systems aimed at businesses. They were trying to sell us square holes for our round pegs effectively. Jadu were the first content management system software provider that we came across that were developing specifically for local government. So for us at that time, it was a bit of a no-brainer, really. There was just me back then. In 2005, the council signed a contract with Liberator to provide some of our services. So Liberator came on board to do revs and bends, to do HR, property services, customer services and IT services. So at that point in the journey, we went into partnership with Liberator. 2 years after that, we were upgrading our Jadu system to the Jadu Continuum service. Seemed like a really good time to start working together with Liberator to start developing digital services for our customers. So back then, I was a team of 1, and now these are some of the other people that are working on the website project with us. Liberator staff, council staff and Jadu staff, just to illustrate the growth in our partnerships. I'll talk more about our individual contributions later. So at the start of our journey, we'd finally managed to convince senior management that it was worthwhile doing. Our customers were crying out for more access to online services. We knew we needed to be the first choice for our customers, so we knew we needed to make our processes efficient and effective. When we looked at what the basics were that we had in place already, these were some of the good things. We had a solid content management system. We had control of our own navigation and content. We'd pretty early on got a content strategy in place. We originally had a team of about 25 web champions spread across the council who were all writing content. They were all writing it differently. They were all insisting we use words like hereditament, bulky uplift, etc. So we had decided that because we were a small enough council, we would bring control of the content back in-house. I'm based in the communications team. I was based in IT, so I've got a foot in both camps, really. But I'd followed the progress of gov.uk with a lot of interest and sort of modelled a content strategy based on the work that they were doing. We had good accessibility out of the box thanks to Jadu. We had lots of accessible, customisable online forms with lots of outputs, so you could do lots of things with the data you collected in those forms. And we had lots of online forms on the front end that customers could fill in to request services from us. The bad, what we didn't have. We didn't really have a digital strategy at that point, an overall game plan of where we were going and what we were trying to achieve. We still had some inconsistencies in content. We'd upgraded the website and we'd rewritten as much as we could, but we still had some content overhanging from the old site that needed work. Yes, we had lots of online forms that customers could fill in on the front end to request services from us, but the minute they hit send, the digital experience ended and the human interaction one began. The forms went round the authority as emails. There was lots of rekeying. There was no integration at all in the back end. There was no workflow put in place. There was a lack of communication really as well between council departments, but also because we had a new partner in Liberator. Physically, their contact centre was in a different building, so there was a bit of a divide there, physically as well as mentally. So we needed to look at that as well. The downright ugly were links to some pretty shocking looking third-party systems that we needed to improve for the customer. We had a complete lack of integration between our online forms package and our online payments system. So a customer would request a wasp's nest removal via a form and then have to go into a completely different system to pay for that wasp's nest removal. This results in lots of confusion, as you can imagine. So we got customers requesting the service and not making the payment, or stumbling across the payments system and paying for it, but never actually requesting the service. The other thing that we were really lacking was the online account for the customer. So they would press send on their online form, and their online form would effectively go into a black hole. There was no way for them to find out what happened, had their service been delivered, had it not, was there an issue, etc. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to deliver a new CRM system. We wanted to integrate with our back office and payment systems. We wanted to give the customers the ability to transact online, to track their service requests, and to get automated notifications when their service status changed. So at the start of our Liberator and Jadu partnership, that was the aim of the game. There's probably many cliches about public-private partnerships and trying to work together. There's probably a lot of common misperceptions out there. We thought that Liberator just wanted to make money. Liberator might have thought we were sitting around with our feet up on the radiators because we were local council workers, etc. I'm happy to say that we never had to use the Getting Along t-shirt once. The key to the success of working in partnership for us was strong project management, clearly defined roles, and communicate or every step of the way. I'm going to talk a little bit now about what I feel our individual strengths and weaknesses are as partners. If there are any Harry Potter fans in the audience, they will recognise the Deathly Hallows. 3 legendary objects that, if united, make up one Master of Death, I think is the official description. I'm going for a slight rebrand, and I'm going for 3 legendary organisations that, when united, make one master of customer experience. I think we should try and, market that. Pendle. What do we bring to the table? We know our business, we know our customers, we know our legal requirements, what we can and can't do. A lot of our staff live locally and are really, really customer focused. They live in the community, they want to serve the community that they live in, and they want to help their customers. We used our staff quite a lot in the testing processes, parts of our processes, because for the simple fact that they were local. We didn't have a lot of resource and budget to get external customers in, and we've tried to get external customers in the past, and not had much success with that. That is something we do want to work on in the future. But in the meantime, we used a lot of local staff to do our testing. We have to be slightly careful using your council workers to do the testing, because obviously sometimes they think there's nothing wrong with the process. But for the most part, they were really engaged in that, in helping us to get the processes right. Liberator, I think Liberator's special strength was their objectivity. They were outside looking in at the council, and I think this is where they excelled really for us. They provided project management for the whole project. This is absolutely vital for us because our staff are all have day jobs to do as well already. A lot of our staff aren't well versed in good project management techniques, so it really helped to have that framework in place to guide us through the process. They clearly defined the roles and responsibilities for everyone involved in the project, who worked on which parts of the project, who could make decisions about what parts of the project. They kept everyone on track and focused with clear jobs that were to be carried out with clear timescales. We had project board meetings throughout the process. They were always strictly run. They didn't turn into talking shops. We were an hour in and out, get through the agenda. They also did all the business process re-engineering for the processes that we've done so far. We've got one of our Liberator business analysts here today, Wendy, who they did fantastic work looking at our processes before we ever got them near the CXM, looking at getting rid of waste and efficiency, etc. And they were really good at getting our staff to embrace change in the processes themselves as well. Jadu. Yes, they provide the platform for all the great work that we do, and we don't have to pay to upgrade ever again. But I think, as we've been referred to earlier, what Jadu have done for us is teach us to make us self-sustaining, and that's really important for a small council like ours. For the first process that we developed, which was bulky waste, they did most of the development and our staff watched and learned and got involved a little bit. For the second process that we developed, our staff took on more of the development work and worked with James from Jadu to develop the garden waste process, which was a second process that we did. The third and fourth processes that we're doing now, Jadu has stepped back a bit now. They're letting us get on with the development work ourselves. They are obviously there as and when we need them, but they are allowing us to take over the reins. And obviously the aim of that is that when our phase one of this project is finished, we've got the power, we've got the skills and the knowledge necessary to develop our own processes from end to end. I think this is vital for councils with limited budgets. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the business process re-engineering and run you through the two tasks that we've done so far. Our Liberator business analyst sat down and mapped out the process as is and then came up with some initial ideas around how the process could work. And then we got together all the people that were relevant to delivering that process. The council staff, the Liberator contact centre staff, IT, etc. We all sat around the table, we looked for waste, we looked for inefficiency, we questioned everything that we did. Because we've always done it this way was not an acceptable answer to Wendy and Jonathan. It worked really well because the business analysts were really objective about the processes. They were very tactful when they were dealing with spreadsheets that people had developed over the last 25 years. And we tried to challenge the processes and not the people. And I think that really helped with the way that they did the business process re-engineering. And we always developed with the customer in mind. We never built to fit the back end. Once we'd done that, we looked at every scenario of the service delivery and we tried to future-proof it. So if we thought maybe in the future it was a process where a payment might become involved at a later date, try to get the building blocks in place to make that as easy as possible. Once we'd worked out the processes, they were handed over to the build team to build in the CXM. The build team consisted of Liberator IT staff and our web development officer, who's a council staff. So again, you're spreading the skills across your partnerships, not putting all your eggs in one basket. And at regular points throughout all of this process, we reported up to a project board. The project board had the council's corporate director on it, myself, IT staff, staff from the relevant service areas for the process that we were re-engineering, and James would dial in from Jadu as well for every meeting. Once the processes were all finalised and we got the build underway, Liberator worked out the key messages that we needed to communicate to the customers, whether that was content on a web page or whether it was an email that they got when they had submitted a request or when something had successfully been carried out. And all of those messages were passed over to me to work out so that I could re-engineer the content as per our content strategy, so that I was happy that the messages were clear in plain English, built to our content style, guidelines, etc. And once we'd done all that, we tested the processes until we were happy with them. And as I said earlier, we used a lot of council staff because they're also local residents to test. Once we were happy, we went live. So the first process we did was the bulky waste collection. The old way for the customer, they would fill in an online form. That online form was emailed to our waste services team. Waste services then rang the customer up to give them a date for their bulky waste collection. If everything went well, the collection was carried out. If it didn't, we didn't tend to get back in touch with the customer. We waited for them to ring up then and say, I booked a bulky waste collection, you didn't take it, what's the problem? And we then had to rebook the collection. As you can imagine, we had lots of complaints about that. And with the advent of social media, the complaints got more vocal and more widespread and seen by lots more people. The process now is that the customer fills in the online bulky waste form, picks from a calendar the date that's more convenient for them, makes a payment, because partway through this process, our councillors voted to introduce a charge for bulky waste, which we hadn't done up until then. So they now make that payment. The form's completed. The form populates the customer's record in the CXM. Our contractors, who are third-party contractors, are currently extracting a day of collection report. They carry out the collections as per that report. They update the system if there's been any issues with any of the collections, and the customer receives an email if there's been any issue, or an email to say your collection is now complete. Obviously, we'd like to take that one step further and look at in-cab technology, so we're taking out that collection report and maybe things are being fed straight through. The second one we did was the garden waste collections. Wow, this was an absolute mishmash of stuff you had to do to successfully subscribe. First of all, the customer needed to know what their garden waste reference number was. So we had an online directory on the website where you could type in your address, find out your garden waste reference number. Then there was a separate web page with information on how to subscribe to the scheme. Then you had to go to Civica, which is our online payments method, to actually pay for the service. You waited for your sticker and then stuck your sticker on your bin. In the back end at the council, once that subscription request had been made, we cross-referenced that payment with the garden waste rounds to make sure it was on a legitimate garden waste round. Then we added it to a spreadsheet. We ordered stickers, which came from a printing company, and we then filled in the stickers by hand and then posted them out to the customer. We actually hired extra admin staff every year to administrate the garden waste renewal subscription process. The new way is you fill in the online form and the payment is integrated. So we use the Jadu PayBridge module to integrate the payment and send it into Civica in the back end. We've used, seems dead simple and obvious to people now, but we use a postcode lookup, which reduces human error massively because people were typing their addresses in wrong in the old online forms, etc. The customer just needs to know where they live, which I'm pretty sure most of them can manage. They don't need to know their garden waste reference number anymore. That's out of the equation. And then from there on, the form goes through PayBridge to Civica, and then the output of that form goes directly to Euro Labels, who now print the labels electronically and post them out to the customer themselves. So we're completely out of that equation. We don't need to hire admin staff anymore. The customer waits for the sticker, sticks it on the bin, and then the next year when it's time for renewal, they get an automated email from us and they just subscribe again. I've talked a lot about the partnerships, the physical partnerships between Jadu and Liberator, but I also think there's another partnership at work here, and it's the partnership between the process and the technology, but also the content and the customer experience on the front end. And if anybody recognises Field of Dreams, which is one of my favourite films, if you build it, they still won't necessarily come. A successful process has to get all of the elements right to be intuitive and easy to use, and to give the customer what they want and when they want it. I could probably bang on about content for the next 3 hours, but I won't do. But I will say it's vitally important that the content on the front end is right. You need to use data to look at your content, to look at how your customers are using your websites. You need to use user journeys and user stories to try and put yourself in their shoes and work out the stories and journeys and what they are going to want. We always write our content now based on the audience's vocabulary. What words will they be using? What words should you be using? What format is best for your audience? Is it information? Is it an image? Is it a form? Is it a map? What your audience actually wants from you. Because a lot of the time I think we assume that this is what we should give them, and actually if you look at your data, it's not what they're actually looking for. So we use a lot of data around the processes that we're looking at to make sure we're getting that stuff right. And the last thing, and has been mentioned a few times today, is digital exclusion. So we've closed the cash counters in our contact centre, but we have PCs in there, so when people come in, we can help them. We have staff on hand to help them access our services online. We work in partnership with all the libraries, so we have regular meetings with them where we tell them what services are online and how to access them, so they pass that knowledge and information on to the customers that they come into contact with. We have a directory of organisations that are providing IT support, whether it's general IT courses, how to use email, so that people know which organisations they can go to get help getting online. We also work closely with community organisations, such as Armed Forces Covenant, our Older People's Champion, Burnley and Pendle Community and Voluntary Service. So we regularly updating them with information around the services that we use, so that they can pass that information on to the people they come into contact with as well. That's what we looked like in 2004. I think Bob will find that a little familiar. So that was our first ever website. Today, we look a little different, and we have our customer account page there where you can see your cases, your services, your payments, etc. Our general channel shift figures are looking pretty good at the moment, I would say. We know that we're going in the right direction. Our footfall has dropped from 2,000 a month to less than 100. The amount of post we receive has dropped by 50%. Another interesting stat that I didn't put on there is that month on month, when we look at who's accessing our site and how they're accessing our site, we're about 61% are accessing via a mobile or tablet. So it's vitally important. We have quite a lot of vulnerable customers in Pendle who don't have access to PCs necessarily, but a lot of them will have a smartphone. So it's vitally important for us. And beyond, what are we doing next? We want to continue to tackle digital exclusion. We want to look at the next high volume service requests. A lot of that will focus on commercialisation. So we're wanting to look at things where we can generate income. So we'll be looking at pest control services, gardening services, commercial waste contracts, that sort of thing. We also want to look at our internal processes, because I think where we may fall down at the moment is we're possibly not practicing what we preach. So there's lots of internal things that we can do, processes where there are escalations based around time and workflow, so complaints processes, for example, managing subject access requests for GDPR, freedom of information requests, that sort of thing. And I think I've managed to be quite quick because I know lunchtime is approaching. I think to sum the whole thing up, the clear message for us is that on our own we would not have achieved any of that, because we just simply wouldn't have had the resources or the skills. I think we've been successful so far because we got the right people round the table. I think we were successful because our business analysts really dug down into the processes and streamlined them before they ever got near the CXM. So Wendy spent a day out on the bins with the bin men to see how those processes actually operated, and it's really good to get that knowledge to feed into your re-engineering. We were really clear about our roles and our decision making, who was responsible for what. We project managed every step of the way. I've possibly been one of those people who's thought, ooh, who's got time to do that? But I really do think if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It really has made sure we've achieved on time. We got the partnership between the processors, the technology and the content right as well. We didn't forget the content. A lot of the time it can sort of be the last thing, shove a link onto a page and everybody cross your fingers, and you need to make sure that you don't do that. Hope that's been useful. I'm staying for the rest of the day. If anybody's got any questions.